All right, good morning, guys. This is the Saturday noon podcast, strategy podcast for Tortoise Capital. It is November 28th, 2020, noon. And giving thanks to the folks who were on the true storytelling call this morning, the Owl True Story Roundabout. We do those now on Saturday mornings from 10 until noon, and I'm going to shift the regular Saturday morning podcast to noon so that we build enough time. So we do the True Storytelling Exchange in that sacred space on Zoom so we can see each other's faces a little easier, and then we'll continue to do these on GoToWebinar. Just feels correct. So this morning we talked about heartfelt stories of gratitude, and we decided, let's see, 2 weeks ago in the inaugural session. Let me try to say that again. The first session we did was we explored stories about when we discovered our life's purpose and what that meant. And then this morning was gratitude in recognition of the holidays. And we decided that next week we're going to talk about perseverance. So when I do my nightly walks, perseverance is going to be on my mind. And then next Saturday morning, a true story will emerge to me that's the one that I need to tell to that circle of trusted friends in that safe space. And so if you're in the sound of my voice, you're invited to join, and just send me an email and I'll send you the instructions on how to get there and what to do. You will be among friends. And Betty has workloaded us for a deeper story when the time is right, but we're thinking about with our inner mind the stories of divine intervention, which can be when we received divine intervention or when we were the instrument of divine intervention for others. And so the stories that'll emerge from there will take on those tones. Okay. So I want to tell, just to set the stage a little bit on psychology. So I've been studying the 10 ox herding pictures. And for those of you that heard the 10 ox herding pictures from the Zen tradition, you heard some of that in the coaching session I did with Ken H. So if you didn't hear that one, you really should. So on, was that, I don't know, maybe that was last night? Or whenever we did it. It was this week. So Ken has taken the hybrid workshop and has been a hard working and industrious student all the way through this year. And he did a 3-day prototype exercise in day trading. So we went into that black box and did a bunch of work. And 193 trades later, emerged with 29R and a whole boatload of insights and histograms and data, which he offered to me. And so then I did a coaching session in 2 phases. The first one was where I analyzed and dialogued with him on what I saw from the evidence he provided. And that included some ideas on restorying and the use of language to change the way you look at things. And that comes out of the true story tradition, as taught by my mentor, David Boji. and which we experienced a form of this morning, true storytelling, coming from the work of David Bogie. Our little story circle this morning was a manifestation of those principles in action in the form of creating a sacred space to tell true stories with each other. And from there, we go on to change the world. So some of the techniques of true storytelling allow us to take a given story, a nice tight little package of story, and then you apply true storytelling principles to it, and there are 7, and it allows you to explore the possibility space of what else all of those facts and events and the everything and the circumstances that went into the making of the story can be reworked, and you get an additional story. So what you end up seeing is that your stories beget new stories, and you end up creating tapestries of potential and realities that take off from that seed. And then all of these are really all aspects of some kind of underlying truth and reality, of which the original story was one way to look at it. And then as time passes and perspectives change and insights, and you change this word to that word, or delete this word, or add a new one, and you get this tapestry or mosaic effect of some kind of underlying truth about the world in all its many different dimensions. So that truth begins to embody and manifest in the world. So you saw some of that in the coaching that I did with Ken, where I thought an important moment was when he said, well, it was just a small experiment. And without replaying the whole story, it was just, if you get rid of the word just, now suddenly I did a small experiment. That's what you want to do. If you say it was just a small experiment, it almost disrespects or belittles or undervalues or undermines the truth of what a small experiment really is. A small experiment is risk adjusted. It's low risk. It's a low risk way to acquire some knowledge about the world in the form of an experiment. So no preconceived notions, but there may be a theory that underlies that I want to test. So that's not just a small experiment. That's a small experiment for the purpose of gaining knowledge. That's a very favorable risk to reward ratio. That's a good trade. And so we need to respect good trading when we see it. Taking small experiments, and lots of them. 193 experiments over a 3-day period that netted 29R. That has some pretty powerful and profound effects. And so when we study the lab report, that's what we did with the coaching. So we went through that and we identified a lot of different things to talk about. And then in the second round of coaching, I asked him to do a plan, prepare, execute, assess, and a sustain, improve, and action plan in the usual way, our standard way of doing after action reviews. And then I asked him to take a look at 4 different dimensions. I said, take a look at your actions and your strengths, sustains and improves in the dimensions of mind, body, spirit, and technique. And then frame each of the insights as one of those. Well, what Ken did was amazing. He kind of color-coded all these things. So things that he wanted to act on that were in the area of body, where he wanted to improve on maybe health and relaxation, he would put in red, and specific techniques that he did well that he wanted to sustain, and reinforce and so forth. So it turned out to be a really amazing one-page action plan that took all of the insights from coaching and turned it into an action plan. And that is now the new standard. It was just amazing. And so a lot of the principles then of true storytelling techniques are ways in which you can just start with a story and develop a plan for action in the world in a low-risk way that's based on knowledge and evidence and allows you to go forward to improve in a spirit of continuous improvement. So one of the elements of true storytelling is this idea of good techniques in a craftsman's hands. Well, that's one of the ways that you actually demonstrate a respect for the sacred stories upon which you are working. So if there is a sacredness to the story that is offered, then there is a sacred quality to the craftsmanship which applies techniques in the development, refinement, extension, elaboration, building upon these initial seed stories to create the new stories from which we may build our wall of protection with bricks, our safe space against the forces of evil in which we can grow our crops and protect our people, and build the roads that allow us to connect to each other, and link together our homes and villages in a sense of community. So all of these things take on a sacred quality, and that was really what the 10 ox herding pictures are all about. And it talks about the ox being the heart mind, which connects our little walking man in his wu-wei space of action. The heart mind is what connects that little guy to the everything else in the world. And it's the mind, spirit, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, touch, the 6 means by which we connect to the world. And so each one of these has an action associated with it. So eyes is to see. So the act of seeing, when you are seeing, you are connecting to the everything. And when you connect to that everything, there comes a moment when the subject-object duality disappears because of the quality of this connection. And in that quality, the ox lives, in that dynamic, living, experiential moment in which subject and object are unified. That's the heart mind that is the ox. And so in the ox herding pictures, the Zen masters remind us of this endless journey in which we wake up and we don't have the ox, and so we go search for the ox. And then we track the ox by the marks that he leaves. And then through perseverance, we see the ox. But seeing isn't catching him, and then you have to catch the ox. And catching him isn't taming him, and then taming the ox and bringing him back into an orderly relationship with you and that ox together on that wu-wei journey to wherever you're going. And so the taming of the ox, that 5th ox herding picture, the Zen masters say, is the most important one, but you can't do it without these other ones. And so as you go around this wheel of living and breathing and existing, it reminds us of this journey. And so when I take my nightly walks, I'm thinking about one of these, and I'm on Taming right now. So my story last night was, as The taming of the ox means that you're always mindful of him, because he wants to go smell the sweet grass and do what he wants to do. And if in a moment of inattention, you and that ox will go his own way. And it starts with the smallest thoughts. And if you become distracted and follow those things, the ox begins to become untamed. And so it's eternal vigilance there. So that reminded me of the importance of technique and attention to detail and staying with the work and being able to see good from bad, right from wrong, attention to detail in the sacred way in which you apply the craft, which is a way of respecting the sacred truth of those stories that you're living. So that's what that 90-minute session with Ken was all about, was an effort to honor the work that he had done by bringing whatever skills I may have as a coach to try to help understand that story. And there's some really powerful ideas in there that I think are, and I'm so grateful to Ken for him sharing that story. He immediately said, yeah, if you think other people would benefit from it, so be it. So that is a highlight of the week for me. One of the highlights is being able to kind of connect this idea of true storytelling in its technical form and the human sacred story exchange that we did this morning for gratitude, for which I'm thankful to Betty and Lisa. And I see Pavel was there, and Bob and Tom and I, to which you guys are. We would love to have you if you'd like to be there. And if you need to be there, you'll find a way. It starts with an email to me. And that's what I wanted to say to get us started, and just to really emphasize that this little 90-minute coaching session with Ken, I think, would really reward your attention and effort. I think it was really something special. Let me save this real quick just in case. So I want to shift a little bit to some craft work on Tesla, Bitcoin, and what's the other one? Oh yeah, PBW, because these have been really essential parts of finding the mover. And it really just felt like those are like the ox, in many ways. Those first 5 stories, it was like, where is the ox? So I got to search for the ox. And then I got to track the ox once I see his marks. Aha, tracks. And then there's like, oh no, seeing the ox is different than just following his tracks. When you see the ox, that is a moment of magic. And then to figure out now how to catch that ox without getting gored, yikes. And then taming the ox. And, doing routine things routinely each and every day. And these first 5 lessons of the ox herding pictures sort of reminds me a lot of the trade process. That in that vast, wide world of potential in the marketplace, there's all these targets and potential symbols and all that. And which one? And my hands are empty. Which ones am I going to pick? And searching. So I got to look everywhere. And one of the ideas in the that first ox herding circle, ox herding picture, was this idea that in whatever your search space is, and you don't have the ox, like you don't have this thing, like you want to be able to ride this thing, this powerful beast, for a long time, like a really good swing trade or a quarter trade. I want to get on it and just let it go, like a train going across, taming that ox. It's not until you have completely searched all the way through your everything and said, there's no ox here. Then and only then have you completed the first task, which is to search, and I don't have the ox. So I've verified I do not have the ox in hand. I have no ox. Where's the ox? I don't know. I've searched everywhere. He's not here. When you're in that position, it can be very natural just to say, oh man, I got no ox. Despair and gloom and misery. But one of the things that you will recognize is that when you've identified that there is no ox to be seen anywhere in here, and you're kind of in that little this little state of, oh man, it turns out that the ox is in any direction that you take, any path out of here is one step closer to the ox. What you've really done is verified, I don't have an ox already in hand. And if you think about that as like a continuation pattern, I've talked before about the idea of continuation patterns as one of the three sources of signals or trades or candidates or trade ideas. That something that I'm already on and that's continuing to work and it hasn't hit the exit, I already have built up all of the context and the understanding and the trade framing. I've already got that. So that's actually an easy one. All I got to do is just keep doing routine things routinely. I'm already riding that ox. So just stay on him. Don't get shaken off. Hold on to that ox. Stay with him. That's why that's a really powerful way to use your time, because your plan is stay on the ox. And I'm prepared to stay on the ox. And my execution, I just got to stay on the ox. And under assessment, am I still on the ox? Is he still marching along? Is he still going? Then it's valid. So the continuation patterns are really the easiest way to just keep going. It's a very efficient way to conduct your planning. So if I think about plan, prepare, execute, and assess, the continuation, the plan is just, it was the previous plan. It's just, don't change it. That's easy. Don't change. Prepare. I already did that as a part of the assessment of the previous trade that it was, and so my preparation is almost already complete. I just have to extend and refresh in the usual way. And in the execution, hold on until the exit, till it's time to get off. You stay on. Okay? Easy. And assess. What's up? Just continuous. Continue to assess. Update. And adapt and adjust and respect the condition of the ox and the market and yourself. And off you go. So that's the easiest one. The first source, the usual suspects, is the old reliables. That's all the other auks. I happen to be riding this ox, but these other ones, they may be coming into season. It may be their turn. Are they? And I've already invested in their life story and history, so I've already kind of done the planning, and the preparation is standard. And the only question is it time for them to harness, to get in the harness and pull the wagon? Because if we're pulling this wagon to market, I'd like to have a lot of oxes pulling this thing so that one of them doesn't get tired doing all the work. So if I can get some more of them pulling, that's good. I can manage the whole team. That's why you kind of want to have tamed those oxes so that they're not running amok in the harnesses, and off we go. So I got to have scouts out to see what's ahead, look up the next higher time frame or so. That's at RLFF. But we're carrying goods to market. We're going cross country, wagons ho. So the usual suspects are these. When they're not pulling the wagon, they're just kind of walking along behind, tethered and resting. And when it's their turn, we rotate them in, and then these guys rotate out. So you'd like to have a certain number of these instead of just one guy. And then finally, new signals. So what are the scouts doing? Well, the scouts have a little scouting handbook, and it has a set of standard patterns. That's our little guidebook. What might those things be? Well, it could be all the mechanical systems for swing trading, 5-day down, washout, 551W, triple screen, channeling, overreaction. All of those are standard patterns that can be scanned for. And so when the scouts see something new, it might be something that we just add to the herd and frame the trade. And when it's ready, we put him right into the traces and off he pulls. And then we have strategies that are a more relaxed. I kind of look at it in this stages that initially I like a system because it is very strictly and well defined. But I've also learned that if we can relax those criteria and look for emerging conditions coming from the world, we might be able to see them sooner, even before they meet the strict criteria of a system, that I can think about them as a strategy and start picking them up in the area of interest, as well as the area of mechanical application. This is a good place for apprentices to work strictly by the rules. And an apprentice who can work strictly by the rules long enough and has built up the discipline and the endurance and the resilience and the experience points may then be ready for the systematic or strategic work, where I can give them a little more discretion and artful judgment. So there's going to be more artful judgment out here in the area of strategies. So systems are mechanical and by the rules. And then maybe further out is where we're experimenting and investigating and speculating. And so we do that at lesser risk to see, is that something, this idea, if it's developed, can I bring that into the area of strategy? In other words, increase the scope in which I can apply effective strategies. So that's sort of like in the prototype stage or the investigatory stage, in the small experiment stage. So as my scouts are out there, say, what is that? It might be something. Well, let's try to prototype that. And if the prototype works, maybe I can do a formal experiment on it like Ken did with those 3 days of day trading. And if that works, maybe I can go into limited rate production as a strategy and maybe refine it as a system and get to full rate production. So I have this kind of life cycle of development that by the time I bring it into the wagon and pull in the core positions along, that thing better have been proven that it's an ox and ready for the long haul. And so there's this process of continuous validation and updating as we go, where we're taming it, this powerful ox. So searching for new ideas, looking for the evidence of performance in the tracks, that's the use of indicators, and then seeing the ox, seeing the potential of, that's an amazing thing. That might be something we add to the herd and it pulls the wagon along. And then can we catch it and get it under control and discipline it enough, and then the longer process of taming it, and so that it becomes part of this life cycle of rest and work and getting ready, and then getting into recovery. I need an R word up in here for the work, because we have rest, ready, something, and recovery. So if you can think of a good word that begins with R, that seems to be correct, that deals with work, I would be interested in that so we can complete the thought. I'll use work until we get a better, there's an R sound in work. So in this vast marketplace of all these things, and you don't have an ox, it means you don't have a continuation. Well, then you kind of go to, well, are any of the usual suspects coming into season and ready to pull? So that goes pretty quick. You should always know where they are, because each one of them has a little life cycle of readiness. And for all your little oxen and of your herd, where are they in that? If they're all in the same spot, then maybe you need to get some diversification among the usual suspects so that something is always just about is well rested and is ready to come into the fold. So if we now think about the MACD histogram 0 line, think about this. And that when that thing is in the winter and now the spring and now the summer and now the fall, if we think about this sort of as the seasonality approach, this 0 line is really important. It's so important, I'm going to thicken that up a little bit. That you got to sort of, for me, the sweet spot is like right here to about here, with a chance to reinforce right here and here. And maybe there's a second position here. So they're like those two. But I also love me that collapsing dragon, which I'm going to exit right down in here, because that's a trade cycle for me, that collapsing dragon, when it breaks below. But then this one is also a really powerful bread and butter. But I'm also mindful that sometimes this will reverse and go north as well as going south. So the bigger this move to the upside was, then the bigger the move to the downside can be. And there's your SSC. and SFC. Here's your SFC here. This is an SFC because we had a nice summer. It fell. It held support where it's supposed to if it's going to run again, and now bang, you get that second leg up. That could be really cool. So this becomes leg 1, and that's leg 2, and maybe leg 3 and beyond. But if it doesn't and it fails, then you have a collapsing dragon, which is what you love to see. So now there is a strategy life cycle that you see manifesting through all these things in the marketplace. And the things that I want on my team are things that have something like this normal, regular-looking life cycle that I can manage. And then those become candidates for the usual suspects. Now, I'm auditioning PBW and Bitcoin and Tesla as that, but those things are such young, powerful oxen that there could be a whole life cycle where later on they take on these qualities. But right now I'm enjoying the fact that these things are really pulling hard while they can. And they may, if I tend them properly, I might be able to get a whole life cycle of management out of these things. And so I'm still applying these principles of that life cycle management to the way I'm managing these trades, but at the same time recognizing that they are in this explosive growth stage of asymptotic running, and there's no sign of them slowing down, although there is now. I'm starting to be mindful to the early warnings because that taming of the ox is a continuous thing. That ox wants to go off and do his own thing. And so when I'm riding that ox, and I want to go that way, if I am unmindful, that ox smells the sweeter grass over there. And if I am not paying attention to his little pulls and tugs, it could be that I think I'm going that way, but the ox has already left and going that way. And then sometime I wake up and say, oh, there's no ox. I don't want to wake up and have no ox. So the act of me being mindful and taming the ox is that, yeah, it's hard work to keep him tame, especially when you're working with a herd of those things, but they all have the same kind of behavior characteristics. I'd rather just keep taming the ox every day than going back to the 0 point and starting this all over and searching for the ox and then tracking the ox and then seeing the ox and then catching the ox and then taming the ox. Once you've got him tamed, stay with it. Don't let him go. Ride that ox. Search for other ones, but tame and ride that ox. So, usual suspects, continuations, and new signals that come from those mechanical systems that I talked about that are in the guidebook. The strategies like hybrid frog, RLFF conditions, P1 through P7 of first generation, but the owl, SSC, SFC, collapsing dragon, those are the strategies. And that's more than enough. And if I've equipped my scouts with with his little scout guidebook, when he's out there riding around looking for things, he's taking care of the deep battle to make sure that I always have new things coming into the herd and new opportunities, and I can take care of business professionally with my production, pulling that wagon with the oxen. That's what I want to say about that. Now, I've never said it that way before, but that sounded really clear to me. And I'm going to trust you to let me know if it was. So now what I want to talk about specifically is those guys, Tesla, Bitcoin and clean energy. Talk a little bit about their life cycle. And this is going to be, the actual lesson for today. Yeah, so the first one I want to talk about is Tesla. And Tesla has been good to us. So if we looked at Tesla, much farther back, I'm not going to, if we look way back, if we look way to the rear in ancient history, way back Tesla, it, had a lot of volatility and all that. But then it really had a nice run up and a pullback to 380. It ran up to 500. Actually, it ran up to 2000 and reverse split, which brought it to 500. And then there was a sell-off to 380. Which was here. This was the run-up where they finally figured it out. And in the real world, that made it up to 2000. Then the split brought it to 500. And then there was this big, strong sell-off. And in here is where I had no Tesla. And then I started tracking Tesla, and then seeing Tesla, and then catching Tesla, and then taming Tesla. So this move up into here with an exit was kind of the first one. And then after this sell-off to 380, there was this move. So got a piece of that. Got a piece of this in the usual way on the moving out. So these are all Tesla day and swing trades. And then this pullback to here, 380. 1, 2, 3. There's kata 2. Building the position. The breakout from this like 475 to 380. Third position. Bam. Fourth position. Bam. And now, in the best of all possible worlds, the election is over. And now it's Tesla as far as the eye can see, at the same time that he's got SpaceX and his AI is amazing and he's having battery breakthroughs, and all of this stuff taken together is the era of Musk. So now I've built some comfortable familiarity in how to manage Tesla, exploiting the move when it really gets, I was going to say when the ox takes wing, but that sounds funny. So now I'm enjoying Tesla. It touched 600, which beat this last one. So this is all kind of gravy. And I've got 4 positions in. And now, as I manage, I just look at this as kind of a new era. And it will be a new era in doing that, as long as it doesn't go below what I declare as my stop point. So that's right at about 570. And then if it dropped below 570, I would be all out. And then I would be looking to see, well, where is it going to find? Does it come all the way back here in support? Then I'm in it, because now it's my yin-yang life cycle where I can consider being short in the winter and then buying the spring, reinforcing in the summer as long as it runs. So now I'm into routine management. Like if it does fall below here and I'm all out, and then it starts to reverse, I'm in, or I'm in, or I'm in the usual way, using standard techniques for standard work. And if it breaks down into here, then I would expect it to come all the way back to there. We're halfway. But any place in here are all opportunity. Anywhere to 380, any recovery in the spring is a reason to start this whole thing again. And this time it only went that far, and that far, and this far, and this far, and this far. Oh, bam, this far. So I don't know how far they're going to go, but all of them are reward to risk adjusted. That is standard work for Tesla. Tesla is now in the area of standard work and is officially an ox for me. And I will just continue to trade them in the standard way going forward forever. And I made the argument last week this time about why, because of this combination of things, it's not just a car company. It's power generation, storage, artificial intelligence, space, manufacturing, and transportation, and selling his wares to others that want to build electric cars. So he's selling shovels to gold miners as well as being a great gold miner and an explorer. So that's how I'm going to manage Tesla, and that's where my stop is, 570, just on a technical basis. Right? So now I want to let's see, this is PBW and daily and now weekly. So on a weekly basis, this is what PBW looks like. So looking long term, you can see that the various hype machines and whatever, and it's really technology maturity. Sideways quiet channel, Z3 pinch, one range expansion to the upside. It gets another Z3 pinch, fake one, go two, Z3 pinch, explosion, the collapse of the world. And then this is where we really picked up PBW during the hybrid, the beginning of hybrid trading back here, April and May, because this segment had been so good. PBW was double plus goodness compared to all of the other ETFs out there as asset classes. And so we took our exits when we were supposed to, but when it started recovering in this section, recovering faster than the rest of the world, it felt like, oh, clean energy is here to stay. And then if the Dems win, then it's going to get double plus because it's green energy. And then when you have to rebuild the world because of COVID, you need green energy to do that. And when you don't want to have oil, when you have an alternative to oil, it's green energy. So all those reasons represented a potential sea change, which we identified. And then you got leg 1, 2, 3, 4, and the explosive move when you get a Dem victory and a Republican Senate. The one thing they can agree on is bringing jobs back to America, and you would like to do it with green energy and get in front of that wave. So that's the tsunami of energy that is going to carry us for green energy. Now, how long did fossil fuels last? 1800 to the year 2000. That's a 200-year run. How long is green energy going to last? At least 200 years. Which company is going to win? I don't know, but the sector, that's an ox. And this tells you the ox is born. In UK has said by the year 2035, all their public vehicles got to be electric. The rest of Europe going to be far behind. You got China choking themselves on the smoke that comes out of fossil fuels. You don't think they want electric vehicles? And their contribution in this area is NEO. And what does Tesla do? It's Tesla versus NEO. Tesla has AI and space and solar collectors. Who do you think is going to win that fight? Don't you dare harm a hair on Elon Musk's head. AI is the biggest part of that because it hits every other industry and human activity. And space has unlimited resources, and solar power has unlimited energy for the future. That's why that wins. And PBW is just one part of the green energy piece of this. So Tesla's an ox, green energy is an ox, and my stop on, I took some profits on this because of this. Look at that move. And going into this weekend, that was sort of like the perfect pitch. And I said, I'm just going to acknowledge that by taking some profits. And the reason for taking that profit was this. I took a sniper profit on half my position because it was the weekend, and I'm not carrying that risk over the weekend. And so for me, this was a nice trade. Pause, found support, re-entry, added. It was like, dude, I got 4 into that thing, and it came to here, came back, and then recovered intraday, got to here and started to roll over. That already is feeling like that to me, and there's 100. How much more did I want? So I took 1/2 here at 95.50. So I've got half a position, and this is my manager exit here, and that's at about 92. So I have a half a position still on, and the reason it's there is because here was a close, here was a close, here was a close, and I said, I respect that. And there's Z2, so I'm going to just be right here. I'm going to give it 3%, and that's where I'm going to be all out. And then just like I said on Tesla, all the way back down to here, any place in here where that recovers, then I'm willing to start building those positions again, the same way I always build positions. When it's in my little, if that's the 0 line, with collapsing dragons to here, spring, summer, and cash. And then just wait for the recovery of a supported fall crossing going up, or supported winter crossing or collapsing dragon on the way down. Because now this looks like that little trade segment. My favorite pattern, the easiest one for me to trade because everything's collapsing. But then there's this one, supported spring, reinforcement, and then supported fall, or back to the collapsing dragon. So this is why my stop on the manager is at 95, and that's why I took this sniper position, this sniper exit here. Now, if this turns around and starts going back up, I'm willing next week, starting intraday, to start building that position back in and putting that money to work. But I was not going to allow this thing to have any kind of news over the weekend that would gap the whole position down below here. And I just said, I'm going to take half as a sniper, and I don't even question it because I know how to re-enter, and I know how to exit here, and I know how to re-enter down in here. This is all standard work in hybrid trading, right? So that's that. Now, Bitcoin, the final one for today. So Bitcoin is kind of a little bit trickier. I was going to start with the close one in. This was the end on Tuesday. I took a partial exit here, and on Wednesday took the remaining position there, and then yesterday was this. And I've already been trading that again. So there was actually a day trade in Bitcoin in here, and that was pure day trade. I kept none of that overnight because it was Friday. And if this thing continues to go, then I'm willing to take the profits that I earned from here and start adding them back in and building up the swing trade going this way. But this was such an extraordinarily nice move up, which started when Danny reminded me that the breakout here at 12 and 13 was really pretty good. And then on this little pullback and another leg up, that move was so good that I decided to take those exits in here. I didn't play the short side, but I was ready on this pullback all the way to the Bollinger Band mean on the daily chart. This became a really nice intraday move just from 17 all the way back up to 19. That's a 10% move. So that was sort of the daily tactical. The weekly moves, this is what that looked like. This great big yellow box that you saw over in here was this a low, a higher low. So there was a trade. There's a trade. There's a trade. This was the entry at 12. That was the building the swing positions, and then the pullback to 19, and then the recovery. And that just felt like such an extraordinary move that I didn't want to let that go. Because could it come all the way back here? Yeah, it's Bitcoin. You can do all of that. And then long term, this is what that big yellow box looks like. And this was that trade at 12 going to 24 or 25. And there's the 19 and long. And this is what Bitcoin in the Wild West looks like, this great big rocket sled. So this is much less stable than PBW and Tesla. But Bitcoin is coming online, and here's why I know that. Because Europe is now approving regulated Bitcoin ETFs and exchange-traded notes. So now they're going to take the Wild West of Bitcoin, which is crazy. They said, well, Bitcoin is crazy, so they're going to allow ETFs to regulate that to a certain extent and then allow that to be made available to the trading public. So by putting that layer of management, of professional management and accountability, that says that is now a green light to be able to market and sell. Where's my arrows? I actually want to make that. Yeah, we'll do it this way. Yeah. So now that's the broker dealers competing to sell their products to the broad market, and it's no longer just the Wild West of speculators owning Bitcoin directly. Having this layer of management in there now shows a life cycle maturity of Bitcoin as an alternative. And what is it? It's just digital gold. And so my concern about Bitcoin as an asset class is that with it represents a weakening of the authority and autonomy of governments to regulate their own markets and currencies. And they can't manipulate their currencies as easily when there is digital gold like Bitcoin around. And so if I'm a business person, I can make an argument for why I want to be able to accept and Bitcoin and do all that stuff. But I also have to be mindful that it would take one, in the old days, one tweet. It takes one piece of legislation to put me at risk that if I only go the route of Bitcoin, a government can simply say, stop using Bitcoin immediately. And then that whole business model is vulnerable to a single stroke of a pen. And because it's currency, and that is the mechanism by which constituted legal authority controls the populations through the control of their money. If you can't control your money, you can't control your economy, you can't control your people, and then you're not much of a politician if you let that happen. So there is always a certain vulnerability of Bitcoin to political shenanigans. But when you see Europe adopting regulated Bitcoin ETFs, so now they've and are making those available to the people. Pandora has released the box. It's out of the box now. And so Bitcoin, to me, is now an ox. And off it goes. And it's a young wild ox. And so for me to take some profits in here on this little spike up is absolutely consistent with the way I trade extreme moves beyond Z3. Here's the last time it went beyond Z3, and here it got to Z3, so now I'm interested. I'm always interested when it gets to Z2 and starts to roll over or reverses at Z2. So I like to trade between the Z2s, but I also understand what happens at Z3s when this thing went from 35. Oh, I'm sorry. It went from 40, 38, 9, 23. It went from 40 to 4. It lost 90% of its value that time. So I'm not going to let that happen. So I'm just playing it tactically, and I know when it's time for me to rotate the oxen inside the herd, which now brings that back to this location. So on the lighter scale, that puts this move up here to Z3 in context, and why I was so ready to pull him out of it. I'm not going to let him collapse in the traces, but I'm ready to trade this as an ox going forward. So I have no Bitcoin position now, but I'm prepared to day trade him as it goes forward on the way up. And I haven't tried borrowing GBTC to the downside for shorting, but I'm not that excited about shorting Bitcoin because I think it's on the front end, and I don't want to be on the wrong side of that trade. All right, that's everything that I wanted to cover today. That's about a good hour's worth of strategy and psychology and implementation that I wanted to turn you on to. So I'm going to let you get back to the rest of your day, and I have a walk to do. And I just want to say thanks for hanging in there and being patient. And I will try to be clearer in the timing of the session. So 10 o'clock from now on, 10 o'clock Saturday morning is going to be those true storytelling circles, sacred story exchange. And you're invited. If you were going to come, it's because you wanted to do the work, and doing the work is in the instruction sheet. It's not a trivial thing. It's not a bullshit session. It's an exchange of sacred stories, and there's an investment. And I was in tears again this morning. So that's what you have to look forward to, some tears of sadness, but also tears of joy this morning and tears of gratitude. So that's what happens. And then 12 o'clock will be when the Saturday Q&A podcast or the strategy session for the weekly basis happens. I guess the final thing that I would say is that going forward and looking towards that new year, we're going to do a better job of reviewing what I think is the key, is the weekly. I think the weekly is the key. So that when we see these things that look like this, and we're ready to get it up to the 0 line, so, spring and summer and fall, that we got to get those turning points. And I think the weekly review of the stack of symbols, when are those next oxen on a weekly basis ready to get into the harness, and picking them out when they're ready to start pulling those young, strong oxen. That's the secret. When you get that done, you can harvest that money and toss it back and put it in the wagon. But knowing when to rotate those oxen into the wagon to start pulling is kind of key. And to me, it's the weekly posture, and then the daily allows you to get tactical decision making and all that without being a crazy day trader. I think that weekly daily relationship is key, but we got to see the seasonality of it week to week. That's where it's becoming very, very normal. So let's get in the habit of looking. And then if you remember the 10, 30, 90, 270, remember it's that 90 on the daily is the 30 on the weekly. So if you were watching that 90 on your daily, you'll know when it's time to go look at the weekly. But once a week, you can go through 50 symbols in 10 minutes and see which ones, if you know exactly what you're looking for, and I think there's 3. There's the collapse into the winter, there's the turning into the spring, and then there's the confirmation of the summer. And then the final thing is knowing when to harvest. You're looking for 4 things. Where is it in its seasonal life cycle? That's really, to me, the power of the MACD 4 seasons. And you combine MACD 4 seasons on daily and some of that week, that especially weekly spring. Oh, man, is that any good? That's where we're going to improve our practice going forward. Okay. That's the plan for the year ahead. We're going to get really good at that. And this whole storytelling about the ox herding, boy, you're going to hear a lot of that. It's just correct. Okay? Off we go. Have a good day. Namaste to Betty.